Hello, and thank you for joining us for the Westchester Education 2024 K-12 Education Policy and Funding Update. My name is Nicole Tomasi, and I'm the Marketing and Conference Manager here at Westchester. Before I turn things over to our host and speaker for today's session, I just want to go over a few general items with all of you. Your microphones are going to be muted throughout the entire webinar. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask of Jay, please enter those in the Q&A box that's located in the control bar that should be at the lower part of your screen. We will go through those questions after we cover the ones that we received previous to this morning's session, and we will answer as many as time allows at the end of the presentation. Just so you're aware, we will gather those into a document and send those out along with a link to a recording of today's session sometime next week. A little bit of background for anyone who's not familiar with Westchester Education. We are a division of the employee-owned Westchester Publishing Services, which has been proudly serving the publishing industry for 55 years. Our offices are headquartered in Danbury, Connecticut, and we have staff and project support resources located around the United States, Europe, and India. Westchester Education provides services for basal and supplemental materials, and those services include product development, art and design, production, and project management, which can be provided as either a full service package or a la carte based on your project's particular requirements. And we are proud to always customize our processes to fit your workflows, and this gives us the capability to serve as an extension of your internal resources. So with that all taken care of, it is my pleasure to introduce you to the host for today's session, Christine DeFranco, who is a Director of Client Solutions. Christine?
Thank you so much, Nicole. Good morning and welcome from Westchester Education. My name is Christine DeFranco, and I'm Westchester's Director of Client Solutions, and I will be facilitating the webinar today. We are very happy to have you with us, and we thank you for attending. With our decades of experience in content creation and our large network of industry experts, we are pleased to offer informative blogs, podcasts, and webinars to support our clients and the broader education community. Today, I am pleased to welcome back Jay Diskey of Diskey Public Affairs in Washington, D.C. Jay has more than 3 decades of experience working on education policy at the state and federal levels, and he serves as Westchester's education policy consultant. He is here today to update us on the latest developments regarding K-12 funding and policy. Jay, thank you again, and I will hand it over to you now.
Today's topics, yes, we're going to be looking at the K-12 funding outlook, not only from federal, but also for state. We'll also discuss state and federal policy trends, particularly those that impact the curriculum space, and many of the education companies that are joining us for today's webinar. Then we'll summarize and have some Q&A. Next slide. K-12 funding. Oh goodness, we're gonna have right off the top here, we're going to discuss ESSER funding, which is, all of you know, Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Act, which was created early on in the pandemic. This $190 billion fund has been around for a little over 4 years, and it is the fund that has been used to for learning recovery, for public health needs in schools. It has paid for a lot of educational products, especially ed tech products. As many of you know, the fund is coming to an end on September 30th, 2024. As of April 30th, 80.4% of all relief funds had been spent, which means that $37 billion remained available. Now, April 30th, obviously, I know was a little ways away. I'm using data that the Department of Education releases periodically. Coincidentally, just in the past 24 hours, they've started to release data as of May 31st. I don't have all the data, but I do think that the 80% number probably jumps up to it definitely jumps up to 82, maybe 83% of all relief funds spent, meaning that the 37 has been drawn down a little bit. So that is where it stands. I think schools, states and schools nationwide will be very sorry to see this go. It's obvious that districts are going to hit the much discussed fiscal cliff. The other development at the K-12 level is that there are now funding caps in place. There was a budget agreement between the White House and Congress last spring, which put in place budget caps that really limit the increases. So rather than the robust increases that we have seen at the federal level for the past really 3 to 4 years, we are seeing rather austere budgets. There have been some slight increases over the past year, but not like things were during the pandemic. Summing it all up, I think everybody involved in K-12 education is going to very much miss this funding era. It's not a disaster. There's funding still out there, but things are moderating, is the way to sum this up.
Jay, can you describe if and how school districts may be able to receive spending extensions from the U.S. Department of Education?
Yeah, indeed. Very good question, Christine. There is a process for states and school districts that receive funding, and all states did. Most states, or most districts also did. There is a process to have waivers that would allow for what's called late liquidation. If a district is granted a waiver, they would have a longer period of time to draw down the money and spend it. They would actually have 14 additional months, which would take them to March 2026. So the timeline is this: the funds in on September 30th. That's the first liquidation. And then if not all funds are liquidated by next January, then this other 14-month period would kick in. So now, in order to get a waiver, by no means is it a certainty. Districts have to apply for this. They have to demonstrate that the steps they are going to take will lead towards student improvement, that there are programs in place to move forward. So we'll see how many waivers are out there. Right now, it's really a mixed bag in terms of how states are drawing down. There are some states, for example, at the very top, state of Washington, it has drawn down about 92% of its funds. And then there's states, and I'm moving all the way to the bottom. Nebraska has pulled about 65% of its funds. I think District of Columbia is only at 62%. Even a large state like New York has only expended about 75% of its funds. So it's going to be interesting to see. Again, the national average is 80.4%, and it's slowly creeping up to 100%. It's my guess they're not going to get to fully at 100%, Christine, but we will see. Nicole, next slide, please. Federal legislation and policy, setting aside the funding and moving to actual policy itself. What has this Congress done over the past 2 years in terms of K-12 education? The question is, there's not a lot of major milestones. There's been a lot of discussions about education. There's been queries about ESSER, whether it's going to be spent. Unfortunately, however, neither the House Education Committee or the Senate Education Committee moved on something that's been languishing out there, which is the Every Student Succeeds Act. This is the big act, used to be called the No Child Left Behind. And it has the major titles, Title I, II, III, IV, etc. It is overdue for congressional action by about 3 years. It does need to be updated, funding levels need to be adjusted, etc. So let's hope that the next Congress decides to move on this. There's not time remaining in this Congress for that to happen. In addition, there's been some oversight hearings. There's been oversight hearings. The House Education Committee has held on parental involvement in education and parents' rights. There's also been some oversight hearings on LGBTQ issues. A lot of these oversight hearings fall into the bucket of culture war discussions. So there's been that. Now, since we have this up, you're probably thinking, well, will Jay mention anything about the possible impacts of the 2024 elections? I'm getting that question from my clients quite frequently. I'll just say a few words. I think that if there is a Democratic administration, you will see a repeat of the priorities or a continuation of the priorities we've seen during the current Biden-Harris. And that is an emphasis on funding increases, an emphasis on English language learning. Career tech has done quite well under the Biden-Harris administration. So has Title I, which now stands at nearly $17 billion. And the increases have been really solid. When you look at where Title I and Title III English language acquisition and the career tech, all of those programs are up 12 to 13% over the past 3 to 4 years. So there's been a lot of good increases, and these increases are in addition to the ESSER funding. So that's if there is a Democratic administration. If Republicans gain control of the Department of Education, I think you'll see, again, what we saw in a previous administration, in the Trump administration, an emphasis on private school choice, for example, funding for private school choice, charter schools, for example. Those are the things that were often debated and discussed during the Trump administration. So we shall see. If anyone wants to know more concretely about what the parties would like to do in education, at both conventions, this week it's the Republican National Convention in Wisconsin, and the Democrats' upcoming convention in Chicago, there will be party platforms and there will be education platforms. So take a look at those and you will see in much, much greater detail what the parties are thinking they would like to see out of the new administration. Moving on. Nicole?
Jay, I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Christine, yes.
That's okay. Talking just to piggyback on the kind of federal matters. I heard last week that a congressional committee approved a budget, approved a budget proposal that makes some deep cuts in federal K through 12 programs. Is this the case? And if so, can you speak to this situation a little bit?
Yeah, let me, very good question. And I'm sorry I kind of glossed over that momentarily. There was action last week by the House of Representatives Committee on Appropriations. It approved a measure. It's the so-called Labor HHS education bill. And there were some nasty cuts to education, particularly K-12 education. On the whole, there was, I believe, a 13% cut, 11 or 13% cut to the U.S. Department of Education. And then K-12 in particular, there were 17 program eliminations altogether, zeroed out, such as, and I'll say it again, Title III English language acquisition. It was one of the programs that was funded out, or unfunded, defunded. In addition, Title I took a very deep proposed cut. Now, this is what the House Appropriations Committee has set forward. And it will, in all likelihood, those funding levels will be in a bill that the full House will enact. Last year, there's no cause for alarm at this point, and here's why. The past year or two, very similar funding levels have been proposed out of the House of Representatives by the GOP. But when the bill went to the Senate restored nearly all of the cuts, and in fact gave small increases. And due to the back and forth for a number of weeks and months, the House eventually agreed. Now, my feeling, Christine, is that may very well happen this time. The wild card in it is, when will this happen? The budget is supposed to be done by September 30th. That's when the new fiscal year starts, on the 1st of October, but it rarely is done. However, if this budget is done before the election. It may very well reject the decreases, the cuts. If it's done after the budget, after the election, it's really hard to tell what may happen. It's just hard to read the tea leaves. There's a lot going on because of the 2024 elections, and there's a lot at stake. So in all likelihood, Westchester, well, I shouldn't say that, but I like to blog for Westchester, and I'll probably do a blog on this later in the year if you all would like it. So at any rate, that's probably more detailed than everybody wanted, but I hope that helps.
It was. Thank you.
Now to the states. State funding increases are moderate. They're not bad, but they are returning to historical norms, as I mentioned up here in this first point. 28 states increased their K-12 budgets, which is good. 19 states passed flat budgets, and several state budgets have yet to be enacted. The major point is right now, there's not a single state of the 50 states that has cut their education budgets. They're either going forward with flat budgets, or budgets that have a few percent, maybe even more increase, which I'll get to in a moment. But when I talk about historical norms for state education budgets are usually about 0 to 5%, 0 to 6%. What we've become used to during the pandemic funding environment was huge increases. The state of Michigan had an increase that I think was 15% last year. California 2 years ago had a 14% increase. State of Georgia had big increases. Most states did. And this is state money on top of the federal that I talked about. But the pandemic's over, things are returning to historical norms. So you're starting to see budget increases, for example. In the large states, California 4% this year. Texas had a slight decrease. New York, 2.4% increase. In Florida, which had one of the largest ones, 6.5%. So we're starting to see that. Again, they're moderating, but there's still money out there. And it's available to fund a lot of great programs. Moving on, state policy and legislative trends. As you all heard from me last year, and I think I may have had 1 or 2 blogs for Westchester about it, there's been a very strong trend of science of reading and early literacy. I think you all are well aware of that. Approximately 40 states have passed legislation or enacted policies of various types to support science and reading. These are having a major impact on the development and purchasing of instructional materials and content. And I think we will continue to see that as we go on. Now, one thing to keep in mind, not all 40 of the states I talk about have science of reading measures with curriculum involved. In some cases, a state may have just passed science of reading to do nothing more, science of reading legislation, do nothing more than to do professional development for teachers. They may not add the curriculum piece, or they may add it later. Whereas some states, such as Ohio, they did everything at once. Curriculum, professional development, licensing, assessment, all rolled into one mammoth bill, which, by the way, has $60 million for instructional content. We're also seeing continued, number 2, learning recovery as a result of the pandemic. There's just been a tremendous amount fueled by ESSER funding for learning recovery programs, group tutoring, individual tutoring, all sorts of digital and electronic delivery is involved in WELL. Look for many states to continue that. They don't want to wind these things down, but we shall see. Another third topic, which is interesting, we're starting to see a bit of an uptick in AI legislation affecting K-12. There was a small but meaningful group of states that passed legislation regarding AI. For example, in the state of West Virginia, they created the West Virginia Task Force on Artificial Intelligence. They're looking directly at the use of K-12 and K-12 and higher ed, I should say. Tennessee passed a bill, House Bill 1630. It directs all the state colleges and all the school districts to establish policies about the use of AI in the classroom. Indiana creates an artificial intelligence task force to study and assess the use of AI in universities and school districts. And Maryland has pretty much done the same. So this has just started to bubble up. And I think we'll see much, much more of this legislation in the coming year or two. Cultures war legislation, I won't say much about this other than it's a mixed bag of various types of legislation that you've probably read a lot about. It's the parental rights legislation that gives parents and other members of the community right to review and even reject curriculum materials that they may disagree with. There's also legislation from the state regarding so-called divisive materials in schools and libraries. And there's also a whole range of things related to LGBTQ and so on. Quite a bit of this legislation, but it really slowed. There was very much of an uptick in 2020, 2021, 2022. And then it seemed as if the states that wanted it, they got their legislation and other states did. Right now, about half the states have some sort of legislation, for example, on parental rights. If you're looking for close tracking of this, go to a group called pen.org. It's a free speech group, and they've done a wonderful job of tracking what they call educational censorship. But you can see when a bill was introduced and what happened to it. It's a really great and free resource. Another thing that we have seen quite a bit of in the past several years is school choice expansion, which is school choice proposals have been around for a long time. It's only in the past 4 or 5 years where we've really seen an increase. Right now, there's 33 states that have some private options. It's not to say they have a full-blown voucher program, but they have some sort of expansion. Lastly, something I've mentioned a couple times already, when mentioning the Title III federal program for English language learners, we're seeing large expansion in that federal program, but also at the state level, there's been just increased funding for ELLs. It's a welcome addition. Next slide. There we go. Drilling down just a little bit more, and I'll try not to repeat myself too much here, but this slide takes a little bit different look at specifically legislation that affects curriculum. I believe I hit, or I know I did hit, literacy and science of reading. In terms of math, we've seen a bit of an uptick in the legislation to support math. Some of it is actually called science of mathematics. Also, there's some decent sized state adoptions in mathematics, which we'll get to in a slide or two. Media literacy, we're seeing in the past several years, really since the 2016 election, a number of states, I think close to 20 or 22, have enacted legislation or policies regarding curriculum on media literacy. STEM and climate change education, we're also seeing an uptick in curriculum measures that would support that. And then finally, I want to get to computer science. There's been a number of computer science bills over the past year or so that, past several years, that require computer science courses. There's even 5 that require it for graduation. So I believe that there's probably a lot of curriculum developers that are engaged in computer science materials and content. Finally, financial literacy. 27 states now have provisions for financial literacy courses, and several of them also require it. California, just several weeks ago, passed a bill that would require financial literacy. So there's probably going to be a big state adoption in California in a couple of years. In fact, the legislation requires the state board to get involved and to set a curriculum framework. So look for this, put it on your calendar for several years from now. It's a very good development, particularly in a state like California, where I think it's above 6 million K-12 students now. So all of them will eventually have to take financial literacy. So it's a welcome development.
Now, Jay, how are these curriculum measures at the state level impacting state and local adoptions and purchasing?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Christine. If we were having this 15 years ago, I'd use the word mandatory a lot, that the state adopts and puts out a list and the districts have to buy from it. By and large, of the 18 or 19 states that have a state adoption, only very, very few of them, only a couple, require that districts buy from the list. California, it did away in 2010 or 2011 with its mandatory list, but it still does a list. And districts like having a list. They like the fact that an entity has reviewed the materials and has made recommendations. The districts in California don't have to buy from it. And it's the same in most states. Texas, for example, has state districts have much more leeway than they used to. So it's just a different landscape. One of the things I do for clients is put out a state adoption calendar, and it has the notation, whether about the flexibility involved or whether it's mandatory. So, but it's changed a number of years ago, but for some reason, people hear adoption, they hear Texas, they think it's a required list, and it's not necessarily the case.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next slide, Nicole. State adoptions, again, here it is. We'll just spend a couple more minutes on this. It's a pretty fulsome calendar for this year and next. Math is big. California is reviewing math. And next year, Texas is scheduled to do that. So that's two of the largest enrollment states in the country, and they're doing math. There has been a fair amount of science the past couple of years, and it seems like we're a little bit on the tail end of that after this year. And then finally, world languages. And world languages is usually out there, but for some reason, it's kind of grouped up into 1 year next year. A lot of states doing it, and a lot of states doing different languages as well. Not just Spanish and French, but also things like Chinese, etc. A whole group of different languages. Next slide. So summary, as I mentioned, federal level, K-12 funding is waning. ESSER funding is ending on September 30th. And annual allocations for ESEA programs are capped. Now, I say it's ending, but there is this waiver process, which I discussed. And I think you'll hear more about that in my any future blogs or presentations I do on behalf of Westchester. K-12 level is returning to historical norms of low single-digit % increases. It's not bad, but it's not what it was. But there are just a really robust and diverse number of policy trends favorable to companies. As I mentioned just several slides ago, literacy, learning recovery, artificial intelligence, media literacy, financial. It really is a diverse group of topics. It's not one of these years where everybody is doing ELA, English English language arts, which is great. But here there's a real mix of subjects for what we have in this country and other countries is a diverse group of developers. So with that, Christine, goodness, I will stop. I hope that is helpful.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jay. I'm now going to turn it over to questions that have been submitted to us previously, and then we have a few questions that have come through during our webinar, which I will add on to that. We've got 5 questions that were submitted prior, and I'll start with number 1. Jay, first question. Various studies show that many children have not recovered academically from the pandemic. Given that, is there any chance that Congress would provide additional funding this year and perhaps next year to address learning loss?
Yeah, Christine, very good. I don't think that there's any chance Congress would do so. The Biden administration would like to. I'll get to that in just a moment. But by and large, Congress, there's been some criticism of ESSER, not extensive, but there's been some criticism about $190 billion figure is massive, the largest increase ever, as I say, in U.S. education. There are some members of Congress who felt that it was too large. But there was no concerted effort to reduce the size of it once it was approved. So, but I don't think there's appetite for it. Now, having said that, in the Biden-Harris administration's proposal for fiscal year 2025, it has proposed an $8 billion fund for learning recovery to keep to support the states in keeping this going. Where that might go is anybody's guess at the moment. We'll find out later this year.
Yep. Okay. Gotcha. Thank you. So we have a second question. With ESSER funding, excuse me, with ESSER funding ending in September 30th, are there still opportunities available for vendors, or have school districts already set their fiscal year budgets and made their contractual commitments?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question, Christine. I'll say at the outset, with more than 13,000 school districts out there, it's really hard to know exactly whether they've made commitments. In fact, it's impossible to know. But we do know this. As I said, the FY25 budget started on July 1st, which meant that districts made a lot of their decisions in April, May, and June, and then set their budget. Now the question becomes, did they set funding levels, or did they write their contracts into the budget? The answer is they did both. I think there's opportunities out there, but it is the case that some districts have probably set their budgets, and by this time, vendors may not see the opportunities that they saw several months ago. But again, don't be too discouraged. I think that a lot of districts are still making some decisions about what they want to do in the next year or two. And they're also looking to spend down these ESSER funds. So.
All right, thank you. Third question. Is there a source that can provide additional details on which states have requirements for financial literacy courses?
Yeah, I'm paging through my notes. There is, I think it's called Next Gen Finance, or Next Gen Education Finance. And they have a wonderful interactive map showing the states that have passed financial literacy. So yeah, it's Next Gen Finance. It's out there, it's easy to find. It is very helpful. I also think that they have some sample curriculum. It is a nonprofit, but I think that they are out there generally supporting financial literacy in all ways that they can.
All right, excellent. Fourth submitted question. Funding for English language learners, ELLs, was mentioned during the discussion of federal funding. Can you provide information on the current and recent federal funding levels for English language learning? And how has funding changed in recent years? Yeah,
it's increased really in a big way. That the funding level is currently $890 million. It's beginning to flirt with $1 billion, but $890 million. And that's up from 787 million. Yeah, 787 in 2020 at the start of the pandemic. So there's been something around a 13 or 14% increase. It's a really healthy increase. And as I've said a couple of times during this call, it's doing great things and helping states really do things with their own funding. Funding like this, Christine, is not only good to have, but it usually incents the states, provides an incentive for the states to do some of their own funding for ELLs. So it's a very positive development.
All right, thank you. All right, we have a fifth submitted question. This is a state adoption question. The state adoption process in Texas apparently has undergone some significant changes in the past year. Is this the case? And if so, can you briefly describe the changes?
Yeah, another very good question. Yes, there was major legislation last year, and it is House Bill 1605, HB 1605, passed, and it is a major reform of how the state goes about adopting content. And there's, I'll just describe one or two of the major developments, and then give you some tips on how to find out more information. By and large, this puts more vendors in the game. For years and years, decades, there had been a state board process. Now, the state board process will be available, but the Texas Education Agency, which is their Department of Education, it will call mid-cycle adoption, so to speak. Also, it provides opportunities for publishers who've been rejected in either process, the state process or the TEA process, to say, hey, could you re-review our stuff? We don't want to be locked out until the next state adoption cycle 7 years from now. Can you review our stuff? And TEA will take a look at it. So it provides more materials, more options, more programs for districts across the state of Texas. And as I said at the outset, it really puts a lot of more developers and vendors in the game, which I think is a very good thing. Now, in terms of how to find out more, there are wonderful resources from the Texas Education Agency, TEA, that helps. There's several webinars. I've looked in on a couple of them. There's FAQs. Also, do get on the listserv if you're not already. But yeah, that's Texas, and it's a good change. It's a bit of a confusing change to some developers who are accustomed to the old process, but I think everybody's good in there. So, Christine, I hope that answers the question.
I think it does. Now I'm going to turn over to, we've got 3 live questions that have come in during the webinar. The first one is, will Title III funding also be lower?
Well, that's a good question. Christine asked me earlier about what the House Appropriations Committee did. They zeroed it out. It was one of the program eliminations. Right now, as I said, I don't think that budget will go forward and be greeted well in the U.S. Senate later this fall. But it's really hard to say where things may go. I cannot imagine that a program like that would be zeroed out. It may take a cut, but it's hard to say. So we shall see. Stay tuned. Again, this is a topic that I'll continue to provide information to clients I have, such as Westchester.
All right, thank you. Now our second question, live question that came in, what percentage of districts do you think will apply for the late liquidation waiver to extend the ESSER funding?
Yeah, it's anyone's guess, but I really do believe, on the other hand, if you look at the states that are probably under the national average, which is a little more than half of the states, that means a lot of districts have not expended money. Now, on the other hand, and I'm looking at the data sheet that I have, most states are above about 75%. What it seems to be, I think that there's probably going to be a group of 10 to 15 states, Nebraska, Vermont, Maine, Wisconsin, New Mexico, Alabama, New York, that have been very slow to spend down these funds for whatever reason. Now, some might ask, are they saving it up and hoping to get a waiver? I don't know. It's really hard to read the tea leaves for what these individual states are doing. I imagine some states could be doing that or may be doing it, but it's very hard to say. Meanwhile, there's states like Washington and Iowa that are now above 90%. I can't imagine that they'll ask for waivers, but again, there could be districts out there. One other thing I'll say, I have noticed a number of news accounts about urban school districts being slow to put together plans for ESSER and also slow to spend. I even think I heard a story on National Public Radio about Baltimore City schools was lagging behind. So some companies may want to look at opportunities in districts like that. So I hope that helps, but it doesn't answer the question. I'm sorry.
No, this is good input, and I think a lot of people asking these questions understand that there's, you know, a lot of to be determined on many of the issues just because of the timing that we're in. Okay, third question that came in live, last one so far. So if you have any additional questions, everyone, now is the time to get them in. Last question, Jay, how can someone find out which states have more ESSER funding left to use before the cutout? Is there a website or?
Yeah, well, goodness, there's a number of good sources. First and foremost, the U.S. Department of Education has a portal where they look at all the pandemic education funds that are available. They have, and it looks at the higher education pandemic relief fund and ESSER, and then also a governor's fund that operated the first year of the pandemic. But you can go and see exactly, based on what is now May 31st data, they're updating it literally this week. You'll see the data for what a state has available. So take a look at that. It's very easy to find the portal. I'm sorry I don't have the link right in front of me. I've had it bookmarked since 2020, so I never really look at the link. But look at the U.S. Department of Education ESSER portal. Also look at a couple of other sources, Edunomics, edunomics.org or .com. It is a nonprofit run at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., and it examines education finance. And I believe that they have, past several months, recently posted a district by district resource where you can take a look at what a district, at the funding level. Now, I don't know if that's a district by district funding level. I don't know if they have current spending numbers, but take a look at those two sources and you'll go a long way to having a lot of good data at your fingertips.
Right. Okay. So that's Edunomics and then the state's ESSER portal, which I think you can probably Google that and and find those links. All right, we have one more question come in. Jay, is artificial intelligence under a special federal title?
Under a special federal title, oh boy, I don't recall seeing it, at least in the education titles. I don't remember seeing it mentioned. Now, as I said, it's been a while since every Student Succeeds Act has been reviewed and reauthorized. It was last done 2015. President Obama signed it into law that fall. I doubt if they included artificial intelligence. We'll find it in other federal laws. So I don't think that's the case. I do want to direct everybody's, if you're interested in AI and education, on July 8th, just 10 days ago, the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Educational Technology put out a 40 or 50-page book of guidance for developers that use AI. So anybody, and it's an interesting read, it helps somebody like me who's not a developer. Some developers may want more detail, but it's a good starting point for, I think, companies and vendors to kind of tackle this space. But yeah, U.S. Department of Education, Office of Educational Technology, and they're promoting it, so you'll see it right away. It's a developer's guide.
All right. I have one more question, and then we'll probably wrap it up. We've got two more. Does your view of funding under a Trump administration consider Project 2025? And can you speak to the difference between the two?
The difference between the two, I looked at Project 2025, and for those who are not aware of it, Project 2025 was an initiative of the Heritage Foundation, which has long been a conservative organization based in DC. And several years ago, they began to plan for the possibility of a new Republican administration. So they put together a massive plan. I've heard it referred to as 900 pages. I don't know if it is. But it reviews everything the federal government does, agency by agency. So education is there, but it reviews what happens going forward if there is a Republican administration. Now, to what extent the Republican Party plank bears it, I think there'll be a lot of similarities. But that plank it was probably approved yesterday, or will be approved today at the GOP's convention in Milwaukee. So I think you'll see some education news as a lot of policy types and journalists, and I'm one of the policy types, parse through the thing and kind of compare to what extent the two are similar. I believe they are very similar, with a lot of school choice actions, parental involvement. The Title IX sexual harassment provisions affecting higher ed and K-12, that's been very firmly opposed by the GOP. So I think you'll see a lot of that. In terms of the budget, during the Trump administration, during the previous administration, the White House, the Trump White House, did propose a lot of cuts and a lot of program eliminations. But the Senate and the House was Democratic at part of the time, did not accept those. So everything went forward. And most of the titles got very big increases, I noted earlier. So that's a lot of observations without a firm answer. But what we have here is a situation that's going to unfold over the next several months, if not year, until we see how things settle. And there's always changes. Even if it's the same administration coming back, there'll be changes of some sort. So.
Very good. Thank you, Jay. Okay, final question. I believe the 2025 K through 12 federal budget is out and is 82 billion in 2025 versus 90 billion in 2024. Is that correct?
I think it's largely correct. 82 is a good figure. And of that K-12, the K-12 portion is about 47 billion. Now, why is it correct? And now some of this is starting to come back to me, that if I recall correctly, one of the in 2025, one of the proposals is for funding levels for those titles to stay more or less where they are, but to turn the money over directly to the state. So to get the federal government out of it. So it would simply echo something that the GOP has emphasized for, goodness, 3, maybe 4 decades of sending the funds directly to the state, not having the federal Department of Education or other agencies for that matter involved. So if you're wondering about, there's the possibility of cuts, but then there's a possibility of just moving the money elsewhere to the states and letting them deal with it.
Gotcha. Now I'm going to let one more question sneak in because it is very cut and dry.
Okay.
Where can we go to review the July 8th AI document that you mentioned?
I'm sorry, where to go?
Yeah, is there a website? You know, where can we look at this AI document?
Yeah, it's the U.S. Department of Education's website, ed.gov, and go there. Really easy to find the website, and then look for the Office of Educational Technology. It may be promoted in a news release, I'm not sure, but it was released 10 days ago, and I think it's been referenced in a number of education news sites, EdWeek, K-12 Dive, etc. So.
And someone was kind enough, thank you so much, to include in the chat here a link to it. So if anyone's if doesn't have their chat popped open, someone included the link. So that's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great.
And Jay, I want to thank you for answering all of these questions and sharing your knowledge.
Sure.
On behalf of Westchester Education, I want to thank all the registrants for attending. If you want to stay informed on K-12 policy news and education trends, follow Westchester Education on LinkedIn to learn about upcoming webinars, podcasts, and blogs. And our deep network of experts is committed to helping our clients and the broader K-12 community stay informed and empowered. So follow us, like I said, on LinkedIn to stay informed. Thank you so much. And yes, we will be sharing the slides and the recording afterwards. That was our last question. Thank you, everyone, so much.
Thanks, Christine. Thanks, Nicole. Bye-bye.
And thank you to everyone, especially to Jay for all the information. Thank you to our audience for attending and submitting these questions. We'll be sending around a link to the webinar video next week, as well as a document compiling the questions and answers and additional resources that Jay mentioned throughout our session today. So be on the lookout for that, and you are welcome to share that within your organizations and with colleagues who will find the information useful. And, you know, as Christine mentioned, you know, we work with companies throughout the ed tech and education publishing sectors. And if you have questions or want more information about how we can create a customized solution for your product development challenges, reach out and get in touch with us. Last but not least, I always like to know if the information that we're providing you is of benefit. So if you could please take a moment to answer the anonymous 3-question survey that's going to come up when you close out of the webinar, I really would appreciate it. And it allows us to continue to bring you informative sessions like the one that we've just had here today. So thank you again and enjoy the rest of your day.